The Dallas Cowboys got a huge Week 12 win over the Giants. What does that mean for the rest of their season? So much more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the Cowboys got a 28-20 victory on Thanksgiving for the first time, and it feels like forever. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, obviously. Happy belated Thanksgiving to everybody who's celebrating, and happy Black Friday to those who are participating in that as well.
Already did.
Yeah. See, Mark is already done. Like it's still really early for me at this point. I got to get going to it. So, I feel great. Like it was incredible to be able to eat Thanksgiving dinner after a Cowboys win. Smoke a victory cigar with my father-in-law. I mean, just really enjoyed Thanksgiving the way it was supposed to be done, the way that I'm used to it with my youth, where the Cowboys win and we all are happy.
The way the Pilgrims designed it for it to be.
That's right, exactly.
At what point, we're going to talk about this game in so many different ways, what it means for this Cowboys season, how the offense played, how the defense played. But at what point did you know that this game was over?
Honestly, I think when the Cowboys pulled ahead for the first time, because I just felt like, look, we'll talk about the game overall, but it just felt like the catalyst for the entire game, whether it was positive or negative, was all Cowboys. Yeah. It just felt like Cowboys were the ones making mistakes that were keeping the Giants in the game, and the Cowboys were obviously making what little plays they were early in the first half to kind of keep themselves into the game. The fact that the Cowboys were basically able to give the ball away 3 times to the Giants and only be down 6 points.
Yeah. I'm on the same page. My brother can actually verify this, because I told the story on Wednesday that I like to save my apple pie, the slice of apple pie that my mom until the Cowboys win. Once the Cowboys got up 14-13, I got a nice big piece. So I was with you. I just felt like it was such a slug for them to get the lead. And once they got it, it didn't feel like they were going to give it up. So, all right, let's talk about this win big picture. We're through week 12 now. The Cowboys are at 8-3. What does it mean for them kind of going forward?
It's huge. I mean, it kind of continues along the path that we've discussed, for the last several weeks. It keeps them in. It obviously, helps them in the wild card race, just to get another win. It keeps them in the race for the NFC East, even if that seems slim.
They're like 2 wins away from clinching a wild card spot.
Yeah, and so it's absolutely enormous. And look, you got to win these division games, especially if you want to have any chance to win the division. And I think that your hope is that that you could see the Eagles slip up in one of these games coming up, maybe even this Sunday against the Packers, and then suddenly you're in a spot where you're primed to make it a tiebreaker situation and see what you can do there. So. I think for the Cowboys, they just have to kind of keep pace. Obviously, they're in a good spot to win, to be in the playoffs. That's clear. But I also think that this game was really important in proving something to themselves, right? Like this is, the kind of stupid game that they fumble away, every other year. And I understand why. And listen, I felt that tug too. I understood why. When things looked like Cowboys Thanksgiving games of old, everyone fell back into this, oh no, here we go again mantra. And I totally understand.
I was there 100%. I remember at halftime when Jonas Brothers were performing. Wasn't all that excited about watching that, but it's like typical Cowboys. Once we get a little bit excited about them, they fall flat on their face on Thanksgiving again. And they can't handle success, but maybe this team is a little bit different, Landon.
Maybe. I think that was what I was holding out hope for, is that, look, you watched the game, right? And it was like, the Cowboys, and I use this term a lot, but the Cowboys had all the gravity, right? They had all the force of nature in this game. They were the catalyst, the affecting part of this game. The Giants were making a play here and there, but really, I mean, we're playing mostly inconsequential. The offense had one real big play down the field, which kind of put them into scoring position. It was just an incredible play by Darius Slayton.
Awesome play. Yeah.
And then on the defensive side of the ball, they were making it a little bit difficult to run the football, a little bit more surprising than I thought they would. I mean, having Leonard Williams back compared to with
huge. He's such a good
Lawrence
player.
was just hard, right? It just made it really difficult in the middle of the field. And as much as we don't want to say it, and as much as we like to make fun of pile jumping, Jalen Smith played the best game of football I've seen him play in years. I don't know. So he was obviously clearly fired up, but honestly, like, it was very clear that the Cowboys were the much more talented team. And despite the fact that these two teams shared a record, that the Cowboys were the more consequential team, and that if they just got off of, like Dak said, if you get off our own feet, then and they could start operating properly, and they were going to be able to move the ball and score.
Yeah, I agree. It's a huge win for them to continue to put pressure on the Eagles, right?
Yeah.
Now the Cowboys have this nice 10-day break, and now you get to watch the Eagles on Sunday Night Football, hopefully go up against an Aaron Rodgers who's motivated to play one more awesome night game. But yeah, you continue to keep pace, and you're still alive, not only for the division, but for the number 1 seed, right? You just need Minnesota to slip up once. Massive game. And the Cowboys schedule gets a whole lot easier over the next couple of weeks. They play the Colts on, I believe, Sunday Night Football. They are playing on Monday night this week. So they're having to come off a Monday night game at home. You play the Texans, who are making a quarterback change. You play at Jacksonville. It's time for the Cowboys to go on a little bit of a run and get to 11-3 before anybody blinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Just start stacking those wins up, and look, this is the time of year when anything can happen. Injuries,
Yes.
Teams that are hot early in the season start to cool off as defenses figure out offenses, and that
100%.
vice versa. So honestly, at this point of the game, the Cowboys they have an inside track to a playoff spot. We don't know which playoff spot it is. They just need to stack wins. If they can just stack wins and then let the other team slip, they're in a really good spot. That, obviously the outcomes range from wild card to number 1 overall seed, but it's really just about maintaining a winning record and continuing to stack these wins and let these other teams kind of screw it up along the way.
If I would have told you before training camp, hey, the Cowboys are going to be 8-3 coming out of the Thanksgiving game, you take that in a heartbeat, right? If I would have told you that they were going to be 8-3 after the Tyron Smith injury in training camp, you'd have been like, oh, that's like the most ideal situation. And then if I would have told you that after Dak Prescott got hurt in week 1, you would have told me that I was high or something.
I would have slapped you in the face.
I mean honestly, and that's the position the Cowboys have put themselves in, where this is the absolute best case scenario that we ever could have envisioned after 12 weeks. Cowboys sitting really, really good going into this nice long weekend. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys offense in this game, which struggled a little bit out of the gate. But before we do that, we want to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on just about any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. They are currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. All you have to do is put in $100. They'll give you $100. You put in $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Lena, let's talk about this Cowboys offense. They really struggled in the first half, only 7 points. In the second half, they had 4 possessions. They went touchdown, 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 missed field goal. What was the drastic change here for the Cowboys offense?
I mean, honestly, execution. I just think that they, they had two interceptions, one of which was a miscommunication. Well, I mean, Dak thinking that there was a free play, and then
Which
the
there wasn't, just to be
miscommunication,
clear.
which there wasn't, and then a miscommunication because of that. The idea that of being in a free play scenario with the wide receiver and kind of thinking that he would go out instead of break off his route to complete the pass instead of going down the field. Dak throws the ball kind of flat-footed, and safety makes a good play on the ball. Another interception where the defensive back tackles CeeDee Lamb before he catches
Definitely
the
some
ball.
contact there. They decided to let him play through it. Yep.
And let him play through it. And CeeDee kind of, ill-advisedly kind of knocks the ball up a little bit in the air, and then it gets intercepted. And then a fourth and a series where they go third and I think it was a 3rd and 2, right?
Actually, it was second and 2, 3rd and 2, 4th and 2.
And they just weren't able to convert on 3 straight consecutive plays, which which basically going to count as a turnover. So, you give the Giants the opportunity 3 different times, when you can't convert. It in between and I think this is why I felt like once they pulled ahead, they were going to win, is because in between those plays, they felt like they were making some, they were moving the ball. Like it felt like early on that Michael Gallup was going to have 200 yards receiving on 20 10-yard catches or something like that.
Best game I've seen him play in a calendar year.
Yeah, and he's clearly starting to get healthier, but you're starting to see a little bit more of the contested catch stuff that you're used to seeing, being physical, using his strong hands and all that. I just think that we all thought that the Cowboys wide receivers would go off a little bit more against this kind of banged up secondary. I mean, they had both of their starting corners out for the Giants, and they just weren't making huge plays. But once they were kind of able, like I said, to clean up some of the penalties, I mean, they still committed a lot of penalties in the second half, but just maybe not as terribly timed penalties. And then a couple of times,
actually, I would disagree. There were some terribly timed penalties.
That's true.
You had 2 false starts inside the 10-yard line.
Thank God for Dalton Schultz, honest to God, because after both of those false starts inside the 10-yard line, where both situations look pretty dire, Dalton Schultz saves you both times with touchdown receptions. So, I think that they definitely have some things to clean up. There's an interesting conversation that is going on in Twitter kind of as we speak from Duke Mayweather, who's speaking about Dak's cadence. I think there may be something to it, to the idea, just because there's so many of these guys that were false starting. It wasn't just like one person who was having an issue. I think Tyler Smith had several different penalties, and we could talk about that. But I think only one false start, and then you saw some you saw at least 2 wide receivers get false starts as well.
Noah Brown and CeeDee Lamb had one. Well, we have all next week to kind of break down the film of this, but you're not wrong at all. This is also a very simple explanation, but Dak just played better in the second half. And it's a good and bad thing because he was unbelievable in the second half. I actually rewatched this game this morning, and some of the throws he had were absolute dimes. The touchdown to Dalton Schultz was incredible. But this thing of him starting off games slow is a real thing. His passer rating this year, the first half of games, is 77. He has 5 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in the first half. And in the second half, he's 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and is just lighting up teams. And he's got a passer rating of like 130. Cowboys got to figure out a way to get him going a little earlier in these games, because when he plays at that level, there's not many quarterbacks in the league that are better than him.
I think they just, it really just feels like they need to stop doing so much complicated stuff early in the game. It's like, it just felt like there's so many times when on option routes, or there's just so many times when it felt like there's interceptions that are thrown where Dak and the wide receiver are seeing things wrong. They're trying to read coverages as they're in route, which I understand is like part of many offenses, but it shouldn't be so complicated that like you're causing that high level of miscommunication so often early in games. Like maybe the Cowboys just need to simplify things early in the game.
Dumb it down, right? And then as the game goes on, start adding wrinkles, right?
Yeah, add more option routes if you have to. Add more things where you kind of you're more reliant on being in sync with the rest of your offense. I just think that there are times when Kellen Moore tries to get a little too complicated early on. And I don't think that that's like I don't think that that's like a play caller flaw. I think what it is a mismatch of the play caller and the guys that are playing the game, right? Like, I think that they're struggling. I think that it feels like that it's better for the Cowboys when they're able to work their way into the game with simple stuff. And then as they kind of get their head more into it, they can start, running more complicated things, making sure they're seeing things. And then also just being able to see what the defense is doing to them and making adjustments like that.
I think between Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore, and Dak Prescott, they can handle all the super complex stuff. Like I do.
Yeah.
The problem is you're playing a lot of young guys. I mean, you mentioned the tight ends, Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot, both rookie tight ends. Jalen Tolbert, who's out there a lot, is a rookie. You've got young offensive linemen who haven't played a ton out there. So I think you're on the right track. We need to move on to talk about CeeDee Lamb. Just very briefly. He had a really rough first half in the first game against the Giants.
We talk about tale of two halves, right? Like even more than Dak, it felt like CD really. The difference between like first half and the second half was just incredible.
Well, I was gonna say even the first game against the Giants, he had a bad first half. Remember that's the game where he dropped the big pass, and then he was completely dominant in the second half in this game. First drive of this game, I think he had 3 touches on the first 3 plays of the game. Looked really good. I don't know if he had a single catch the rest of the first half. And then by the second half, it was just clear he was the best player on the field, right? And the Cowboys figured out, okay, hey, they can't guard him. Let's just throw him the ball over and over again.
It's weird how sequencing kind of will give you a bad taste in your mouth a little bit, right? Because you're absolutely right. CD started the game with 3 touches immediately, like carry and then 2 catches, right?
And really good on all 3 of them. Yep.
And then he had 3 straight targets that were incomplete, including I'm pretty sure one of them being an interception, the interception, right?
Yeah. And one of them, the next actual play was the one they threw the ball down the field a little bit, and he kind of had it in his arms, but as he was going down, the ball got broken up. That was another one.
And then, as the second half started to unfold, it was clear that nobody was going to be able to cover him, and that they were going to hold him the entire time. And even when they were holding him, he was still going to catch the ball. Yep. So, I mean, I think that, there was some frustration there with CD. And look, this has been an issue, I think. We talk about Dak. Like, I think the CeeDee Lamb Dak thing that happens early in the game is the main culprit of a lot of this. Yep. They get aggressive early in the game. They try to go to CeeDee Lamb, and it just feels like there's been half a dozen times this season where
mixed results.
There's been mixed results because it felt like there was a miscommunication, which, it's going to happen, but it just feels like they need to kind of cut back on that a little bit in order to kind of save themselves early in these games.
He was incredible in the second
half.
He
was, though.
I mean, he was absolutely. It's a shame that the touchdown didn't count because that would have capped off one of the best drives that he's had.
I still don't understand why that's not a touchdown. I mean, I guess like they need to explain to me like why it's 2 toes, but only if the heel comes down like that. That to me is, anyways. But yes, absolutely, that drive was the CeeDee Lamb drive, and just really kind of redemption time, and just really a case where that was right after he was on the sideline with his head in his hands and he was frustrated, and they showed it, and I think he knew it was time to wake up. And look, I just felt like there was a point when the Cowboys were like, what are we doing here? Like we worked too hard. We just won a big game last week. We're on a short week. Let's just finish this thing and get a long, nice break. Cause they were sick and dealing with all that stuff. I think they were looking to just kick the game in gear and finish it quickly and then try to get out of there and rest up for the next one.
Yeah. Just really quickly, some of the plays that CD made in the second half. He had a 21-yard reception. That was the one-handed grab that he had down the field. Cowboys scored a touchdown a couple of plays later. On the next drive, he had a 15-yard gain, a 14-yard gain, a 13-yard gain, all on the same drive. Yeah. And then on the 3rd and 11, they had 3rd and 11 from the Giants' 25-yard line. CD had a 23-yard reception that set up the Peyton Hendershot run, which we're going to talk about the tight ends probably early next week because we don't have a ton of time today, but they played awesome. CD just took over in the second half, and that's what they're going to need from CD going forward into the playoffs. If they want to be like a legitimate Super Bowl contender, they need Lamb to play like this every single game.
Yeah, and if I could just throw in one more guy that kind of helped especially the first half when nobody else was really playing well, Zeke Elliott had a really fantastic
Yes, he
first
did.
half.
Yes.
7 carries for, I think, 61 yards. So, and it kind of showed you why you want both of these guys.
Yes.
Because, Pollard, it wasn't that Pollard couldn't make hay. It was just more that it felt like he was just, it wasn't his day that day.
It was a Zeke game,
or at least
right.
It was a Zeke game, and it was great to have him there. And that's why you need both of these guys. And I think the 50-50 split worked great. And I think that's, it's just previewing what hopefully comes in the future.
I was actually telling Elliot Harrison today, who I do a different podcast with, that this is the best I've seen Zeke look on Thanksgiving since probably his rookie year. And I think it's because they've limited his touches. Even despite coming off a thigh injury, this is the most explosive and the most powerful that he's been in a while, just because it's finally a 50-50 split in the backfield. So that's encouraging to see. Let's talk about the Cowboys defense. But before we do that, we want to tell you about Simply Safe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security, but you've been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Cowboys listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you don't want to miss it. Simply Safe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. They have HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. They have smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real. And they even have hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. Arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your camera, or adjust camera settings. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that we recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That is simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL. There is no safe like Simply Safe. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys defense in this game. They gave up 20 points, kind of. There's a huge asterisk there because the offense really gave them 3 points, and then they scored a garbage touchdown at the end of the day. I thought for the most part, the defense was fantastic in this game.
Yeah, the only people concerned about that last touchdown were the bettors on the backdoor cover.
Yep,
but honestly, it was mostly a fairly dominant performance by the Cowboys. They give up one big play, which set up their other touchdown. And I think that, honestly, it wasn't like a terrible play by Brown or anything. Like, it
just an awesome play by Darius Slayton.
Great by him.
Yep.
So, I thought that, just to kind of go off the top of my head, obviously we will talk about Micah Parsons with another 2 sacks, 12 total in the season. A monster. I mean, he did both his work, I think, against Andrew Thomas too, which makes it even more impressive, honestly.
That's why I'm wearing the Micah Parsons shirt today.
Look at that. That's awesome. I love that.
Really quickly. So again, I was watching this game with my brother, so he's going to get mentioned a couple times in this game, but
yeah,
after the Cowboys scored the touchdown to go up 14-13, I remember telling him, if the Cowboys are going to be an elite defense this year, these are the stops that you need, right? You just had, I'm looking at it now, a 14-play, 75-yard touchdown drive that took up 8 minutes. If your defense is elite, you get a quick stop and you go right back onto the field. And they did. 6 plays, 20 yards, turnover on downs. Cowboys then went 6 plays, 44 yards, touchdown. And then they did it again. 5 plays, 27 yards, punt. And then on the next drive, 11 plays, 38 yards, turnover on downs. And that's basically the end of the game. Like, they absolutely dominated in the moments that they needed to dominate.
Yeah, and that was part of the confidence, I think, about when the Cowboys took the lead back over. It just felt like the defense was even going to further turn it up. I think, one of the big differences between the performance in the first and the second half, especially for the defense, is that they doubled the amount of time that they were able to play with a lead. The Cowboys did. So that really allowed them to kind of pin their ears back and pressure them. I think it was funny, but interesting that the Giants kind of came out in a passing game early. They didn't really seem super committed to running the football with Saquon Barkley. They were throwing the ball way more than I expected in a kind of neutral game script. And I think it kind of caught the Cowboys for surprise a little bit too. That's what they were hoping to do, is that they were going to throw the football. They were going to do it kind of on first and second down and try to catch the Cowboys off guard and get opportunities where Daniel Jones could throw the ball without, facing the obvious heavy pass rush of third and long situations. So And it was effective at certain points. Obviously, like I said, they made a big play down the field, but ultimately the coverage was pretty decent. And it did give Jones a ton of time, and not that that's necessarily his game either, right? So he was doing a lot of scrambling. I thought that Leighton Vander Esch.
I'm so glad that you said this, because as the game was going on, I'm like, there was 3 different times that he made a huge stop on third down.
Huge stops that just seemed like small things. But again, if we're talking about pass rush being a privilege, right? There were several different first and second down stops that he made where he prevented a 5-yard gain becoming a 7-yard gain, or a 3-yard gain become a 4-yard gain. And then it just provided you, 2 or 3 extra yards on third down, which was enough to force them to throw the football, which was enough for you to get after the passer. And then there was at least one other time where he made the stop, like short of the sticks on third down.
Twice. He did it twice. There was once on Barkley and once on Daniel Jones. And both times how when you're watching a game, you're like, okay, they're getting the first down or whatever. It's just in my brain, I already racked it up as a first down. And he made the stops. I'm so glad that you mentioned him, because I thought he was awesome on Thursday.
We've brought him up a couple different times this year. I think this is his best year. Earlier on, we were talking about, he's almost as good as his rookie year. I think he's playing better than he did then. I mean, obviously he's a different player. It was more about, what could he physically get back to where he was his rookie year. He's playing lights out right now. The Cowboys got an absolute steal when they re-signed him.
Yes.
And he's playing fantastic. And I think what it's allowed you to play with someone like, Damone Clark, who is not, is not super experienced. He's still kind of figuring it out. He's still taking some miscues and missteps, but Leighton being so steady allows you to have a guy on there who is just pure speed and can make a mistake at 60 miles an hour and still be okay, and it's exciting to think about the future with these guys as Damone Clark develops, because you've got such a steady presence and such a well-rounded linebacker like Leighton Vander Esch. It's been such a joy to kind of see him play the way he has these last few weeks.
I hope the Cowboys can bring him back. And
I do too. I agree.
I think they probably will, because he's somebody that the Cowboys have invested in. They like him. I think he likes the role in this defense. He's playing a lot. Knock on wood, he's shown at least the last 2 years he's been able to stay healthy. It's hard not to be excited about Leighton Vander Esch. I got one more player that I want to mention that I thought had a really good game. Dorrance Armstrong.
Yes,
he did have a sack in this one, but there were 4 other pressures that he had in this game that either led to incompletions. Daniel Jones ended up running for like a yard on a third down play, or basically inaccurate throws. And just, he continues to develop into a really solid player. And he even had multiple pressures on Andrew Thomas yesterday. I just thought he was really good once again.
Yeah. And I just think that, having a guy like Dorrance Armstrong, continue to play the way he does, and almost, at first you kind of feel like it's kind of caught because of Micah Parsons, but he's playing so well independently of all that.
Yes,
it's just really, it's really been impressive. Can I just mention one more guy too that I thought, or 2 more guys? I thought Chauncey Golson is starting to play better football than what we saw a little bit earlier in the season. We complained about how his role had been kind of murky.
What's a bummer is he had his best pressure or his best play of the game on the Darius Slayton long reception. Go back and watch that play. He's right in the face of Daniel Jones.
I thought he was going to get that sack. Yeah. I was up on my feet. And then Oso Digizua, to see him being, so relied on and so used as with high volume throughout the season and snaps, and to still be playing at this kind of high level this late in the season, I thought was really, really
fantastic. We're going to break it all down this week. We've got a long week before we get ready for the Colts game in week 13. So make sure you guys join us next week as we discuss this really fun win. But that is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. All the same places that you download the Locked On Cowboys podcast. You can follow our show over on YouTube. Please check us out there. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the rest of week 12. We'll see you guys right back here on Monday.